Good morning, Big Square. RoadToRoad.com with your morning horn of Z's. Your sip of coffee. Um, those of you who have caught my post this weekend, the Fed has folded, has opened their discount window, much like 2008. So we should expect the same type of situation: growing repos, growing bailouts, and then they come to Congress. I have put the stake in the ground at 20 trillion is what I think. I don't know why. For 2 years I've been saying 20 trillion. I've been saying they're not going to come to Congress for 700 billion. They're going to come for 20 trillion. Something so outrageous that it won't happen, basically. Um, so, on the road to 20 trillion, on Friday after the markets closed, the Fed sent out this statement regarding repurchase operations. Remember, they said it was temporary. They said it was it's just the filing of corporate taxes. Then they said, it's just the end of the quarter. They are lying every step of the way. Why isn't anybody calling them on it? You don't hear anybody calling them on it. They don't know what's happening. Even the Fed. This was set into motion in the late 90s by Alan Greenspan. Give the banks enough rope to hang themselves and then pull the trigger. Destroy the monetary system, create as much money as possible, as much derivatives as possible, so that derivative neutron bomb will go off, destroy everything, go back to some kind of sane monetary system. Back then it was gold as money, with a reallocation according to Social Security balances. I've talked about that on Road to Ruta. And now it will be most likely Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, forms of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Obviously, Litecoin would be very good as a means of exchange, but hey, I say to let the free market decide what's going to be used as money in the future. Could be gold, could be silver. I don't think there's enough silver. Could be Bitcoin, could be Litecoin, could be any of the options. Humanity has to decide what they want to go for, because these people who are running the system now will not be there. We will not be subservient to these people anymore after the next time they come for a bailout and we say no. So, where are we on that path? Now, this started, I believe, on September 11th of this year. And that was my date I held for a long time. And within days of September 11th, all of a sudden, the repo rates go to 10%. And oh my God, what's happening? In 2008, it was a one-time event. Bang, 550 billion ran out on September 11, 2008 of the money market. Seems to be something larger, much larger, and prolonged. So keep an eye on that. And I think 20 trillion is the number, and we'll get there very fast. So on Friday, the Fed said they're going to leave the overnight at 75 billion and above. I don't even get it. Why even have a number? It says aggregate operation limit at least 75 billion until November 4th. Why have 75 billion? Why say at least 75 billion? that leaves it completely open on the top end. Why have any number at all? Why not just say we will give you whatever you want? Because they don't want the shock of the banks coming for 75 billion, which would be the largest overnight. They don't want that shock. So they'll throw 75 billion, but they'll put at least, so if it goes over, they're fine. And then they got the term operations. They added a ton of term operations. And I've said this since they did the 14 days. I'm like, they're going to have to do more. And I thought it would start on the 10th when the first 30 billion would expire. But no, apparently now they are not starting on the 10th. They are starting right away. So tomorrow, the 8th, is when the first 45 billion. So it went from 30 to 45. So the 30 was not enough. So they're going to have to roll over that 30, add another 15 to at least 45 billion. And then on the 10th, so this, I mean, truthfully, that's not even expired. So it's actually 75 billion on the 8th will be out in the 14 days. And then it matures the next day. But they added a whole bunch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14-day repos. Don't try to tell me things aren't really bad behind the scenes and getting worse and worse and worse. So what did they do today? Today, 47 billion, and that's not counting the reverse repo that gets posted in a couple hours. I would guess is over 50 billion in repos today, 47 of the overnight. Now, I rode Daruda on the private road, and now I'm moving it to Patreon as well. I'm going to keep an ongoing tally of this bailout. Remember, some is just overnight, meaning they'll put 50 billion out, and then the next day it's paid back. So I'm rolling over the total, but I'm not. You don't add these cumulative. A lot of people are making that big mistake. Oh, they're putting in, 700 billion into the market. No, it's the same 50 billion that rolls over overnight. The 14-day is longer. So this is going to grow. It's just not growing that fast. But it will move very soon into exponential, and I'll show you how that works. So right now, here's where we are. We started at, on 9/11, there was only 3.6 billion, which was a little elevated, but kind of normal. And then all of a sudden it happened that between Friday night, the 13th of September, and the 16th, the rates went to 10%. And the bank said, oh my God, we got to go to the Fed. That's when they ran to the Fed because things were breaking in the background all last week, the week before that, the week of September 11th. And then on the 17th is when the Fed came out and said, oh, we need 55 billion in the market. Immediately, they did an overnight for 55 billion. The next day, they did 90 billion, and then 80 billion, and then 70 billion. And they said, oh, everything's fine. It's just into the quarter. So then they did 75 plus the 30, which is the 14-day cumulative. If you look at the cumulative, it's growing. The highest point right now is the total amount the Fed had out on September 30th was $209 billion, $210 billion on that day. And then that was the end of the quarter. Like they said, hey, we just need this till the end of the quarter. The banks are fine. It's an end of the quarter thing. So you would think it would go away the next day. It did not. It went to 193. It started going down, 184, 175, 182, and now it started to go up again. Why? Because we are approaching the date when the $30 billion cumulative is the first one is going to expire. Watch what happens tomorrow, the next day, and the next day. That's where you build this graph down here, the exponential growth graph. And they need a hell of a lot more. They're going to need 20 trillion when they come to Congress. Right now, that projection for 20 trillion is around the end of the month, about 1025. Now, between now and then, there'll be just more and more and more growing in a bigger fashion repos, but we're also going to get problems in the stock market, problems in the bond market, problems all over the place. That's where the exponential growth kicks in. Then stock market starts falling apart. Everybody freaks out. They go to Congress and say, give me 20 trillion. Where does that 20 trillion come from? I have no idea. It is a number I picked out of the air 2 years ago. I said, it's going to be a big number. And it's going to be more than a trillion because they needed a trillion last time. And they only went for 700 billion because they thought, oh, a trillion is too much. So they did a lot of secret stuff behind the scenes. Now this number is so much bigger because it's the bond market bailout. It is all the rehypothecated assets that JP Morgan has done. JP Morgan's derivative book in the first quarter of this year jumped $11 trillion. So yes, they're going to need 20 trillion just to get them another 8 to 10 years of kicking the can down the road. That's the question to us. People say, well, BICs, they're doing bailouts all the time. These aren't the full bailouts. The full bailout will come to Congress. That's our choice. That's our moment. If we say no, we have a potential for freedom. If we say yes, we screw our kids for the rest of their lives, their grandkids' lives, and the rest. And it goes on and on and on, just like our parents and our grandparents screwed us. We cannot let that happen. We need to spread the word about this repo stuff. Imagine them giving, remember, there's only, 300 million people in the United States? 330 million, I think, is our population. Something to that effect. They could be giving this money directly to the people. And in 2008, if you remembered, yes, they give the 700 billion to the banksters, but Obama said, oh, we need 1.1 trillion also. So they gave that to Obama. Who knows what happened to that? Probably went into the coffers of Obama and the deep state. That's probably what happened to all that, because it clearly didn't trickle down to the people. They said, oh, it's for infrastructure. How's our infrastructure doing? Insane. Insane. So we move along. As I said last week, it's going to start up again this week because the 14-day repos are expiring and they got to go bigger and bigger and bigger. The linear graph right here, this will probably change to about 52, 53 billion when the reverse repos come in, which is I think in 2 hours or so. And so this will be starting right along that linear path. But look at the exponential growth path. This is when problems start happening around the 10th, 11th, 12th. Dick Allgaier has this shocked face of the economy on Monday the 14th, which would be interesting because both Citibank and JP Morgan report earnings on the 15th, on Tuesday. And those are the two largest derivative players. There's also something else going on in the background. The rise in the price of silver is losing. It's a huge concentration. I think it's 6 or 7 large players who own the majority of the silver short on the company. For every dollar that silver goes up, every dollar silver goes up, they lose billions. So we might have some end of the quarter reporting of huge losses. And who are the biggest derivative players? JP Morgan, although they have physical, and Citibank. Keep an eye on Citibank. I expect some huge losses this quarter. And they won't tell you it's related to silver, just like they didn't say that AIG was related to silver. It was. They didn't say that Bear Stearns was related to the silver short. It was. Or Drexel Burnham. It was. Now it's JP Morgan. Keep an eye on it. Now JP Morgan has their physical supposedly. So will they say, oh, it's just an offset? Probably. Because obviously if they have 1 billion ounces of physical silver, yes, for every dollar it goes up, that goes up too, but their short position goes up. And I don't think they match. Citibank, on the other hand, I don't know. Deutsche Bank, I don't know. Deutsche Bank's earnings, who knows? So hang in there, friends. Really good article from Daniel Akele. I'm not saying that right. The repo market incident may be the tip of the iceberg. Federal Reserve has injected $278 billion into the securities repurchase markets for the first time. See, that again, that's misleading because that's the total amount at the time of this writing, the $278 billion, because a lot of it rolls over. Okay, you guys know that. Numerous justifications have been provided to explain why this happened, and more importantly, why it lasted for various days. The first explanation was quite simplistic: an unexpected tax payment. This made no sense. If there is ample liquidity and investors are happy to take financing positions at negative interest rates all over the world, the abrupt rise in repo rates would simply vanish in a few hours. What the repo market crisis shows us is that liquidity is substantially lower than what the Federal Reserve believes. The fear of contagion and risking risk are evident in the weakest link of the financial repression machine, the overnight market. And more importantly, that liquidity providers probably have significantly more leverage than expected. Yes, that's where the derivative. In summary, the ongoing and likely to return burst in the repo market is telling us that risk and debt accumulation are much higher than estimated. Central banks believe they could create a tsunami of liquidity and manage the waves. However, like those children's toys where you press one block and another one rises, the repo market is showing us a symptom of debt saturation and massive risk accumulation. When did hedge funds and other liquidity providers stop accepting treasuries for short-term operations? It's easy money. You get a safe asset, provide cash to borrowers, and take a few points above and beyond the market rate. Easy money. Are we not living in a world of thirst for yield and massive liquidity to lend to almost at any rate? Well, it would be easy money unless all the chain in the exchange process is manipulated and rates too low for those operators even to accept any more risk. In essence, and here's the important part, what the repo issue is telling us is that the Fed cannot make magic. The central planners believed that the Fed could create just the right inflation, manage the curve while remaining behind it, provide enough liquidity, but not too much while nudging investors into long-term securities. Basically, the repo crisis, because it is a crisis, is telling us that liquidity providers are aware that the price of money, the assets used as collateral, and the borrower's ability to repay are all artificially manipulated. Where have you heard that before? On the road, Ruda. That the safe asset is not as safe as borrower's ability to repay all artificially. Oh, sorry. The safe asset is not as safe into a recession or a global slowdown. That the price of money set by the Fed is incoherent with the reality of the risk and inflation in the economy, and that liquidity providers cannot accept any more expensive, safe assets, even at higher rates, because the rates are not close to enough. The asset is not even close to being safe, and the debt and risk accumulation in other positions in their portfolio is too high and rising. The repo market turmoil could have been justified if it had lasted one day. However, it has taken a disguised quantitative easing purchase program to mildly contain it. This is a symptom of a larger problem that is starting to manifest in apparently unconnected events, like the failed auctions of negative yielding Eurozone bonds or the bankruptcy of companies that barely needed the equivalent of one day of repo market injection to finance the working capital for another year. Here's the finale. The repo crisis is telling us one thing. The collateral damages of excess liquidity include the destruction of credit transmission mechanism, disguising the real assessment of risk, and more importantly, leads to a synchronized excess in debt that will not be solved by lower rates and more liquidity injections. It's not going to fix the problem. It's kicking the can down the road for 24 hours. That's how desperate they are. Many want to tell us that this episode is temporary. It has happened in the most advanced, diverse, and competitive financial market. Now imagine if it happens in the Eurozone, for example. This is like the inverted yield curve and the massive rise in negative yielding bonds, the tip of a truly scary iceberg. Absolutely. And yes, we are getting confirmation everywhere that Trump has deployed troops all around the country. This is from Steve Quill. I like Steve Quill. Yes, indeed, the order was signed and activated. We're close to martial law as well. In the event of martial law, Trump will remain president for the duration of the martial law. Internally, White House is in lockdown. No matter if you like Trump or dislike Trump and his behaviors, he is still our president. People should be very concerned about the situation in Washington, D.C. Everyone's going loco. Great time for a remnant to earnestly pray. Second, alert. Urgent flash message just went out to all UN troops in the USA, changing status from waiting to full alert and ready to move within minutes. Other parts of our military are now on high alert. The message for UN troops indicate nationwide detailed orders to follow activation. I expect U.S. military to be divided. This is based on prior behaviors of the different people in the Joint Chiefs SQ. I asked him if data indicates bank closings this week. He said, no, not at this time. Alert. They are desperately trying to avoid a financial crash at this time. Banks stable so far. Fed is now upping the money and being pumped into the markets to $150 billion per night beginning tomorrow. So what were we at? That's from Steve Quayle. Yep, we're at 186 billion. So tomorrow, again, let's look at the repo, what we expect. Tomorrow they can do up to 75 billion. And then the 8th is another 45 in 14 days. So 150? Yeah, I could see that happening. That would be a gigantic jump tomorrow. And again, we're going to get into these gigantic jumps. As you know, my data says around the 14th, 15th, 16th is when we start going exponential. But Steve Quayle's saying tomorrow, if they jump to 150, that's a big jump. So we'll see. But by the end of the month, we got 20 trillion. markets crashing, going crazy, and then they come to Congress. And again, when they come to Congress, it is our only hope to end this nightmare, to save our children's financial future. We have to say no to a bailout. I know it's going to be difficult, but we have to say no. Again, on the Patreon channel, I am posting the repo graphs, and on Road to Ruta, you get the whole shebang for the private road subscription. Don't forget to like and subscribe my videos. I can keep going. I finally hit, I think I'm at 60,000 subscribers. It took me literally, I was getting 20, 30,000 a year until the last year, a little over a year, and YouTube locked me down. I've been at like 58,000 for over a year now, but I think I hit 60. So if you're not a subscriber, please like and subscribe on YouTube. Yes, I know it is the worst deep state owned and operated company, but I do believe the current managers of YouTube will be taken out along with the deep state. So because it's a great platform. And all we have to do is remove senior management and put people in who are freedom related, who agree to leave it an open and honest left, right, or center. You're allowed to voice your opinion on this public platform. And it is a public platform. We paid for it. The CIA was the largest investor in YouTube. We paid for it. We should own it. We do own it. It is a great forum for speaking truth, and that's what it should be allowed. Left opinion, right opinion, center opinion, all of it should be allowed. Maybe even the government take it over, which would be fine with me. Take over Google. Obviously, they can't run a company without injecting their own politics into it. We will see. This is Big Swear. Like and a thumbs up. I'll talk to you guys later.